Today, we're taking a wild biological journey into the microscopic world of our chemical senses, so basically smell and taste. We're going to break down the absolutely incredible machinery inside your head that makes flavor, fragrance, and even physical attraction possible. So let's jump right in.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever caught a sudden whiff of, freshly baked cookies or maybe rain on asphalt, and suddenly you were literally transported back to a vivid childhood memory? It feels like magic, right? But it's actually pure biology. Today, we're going to find out exactly why your brain is hardwired to do exactly that.
Out of our 5 traditional senses, smell and taste are just incredibly unique. They're actually classified as chemical senses. Why? Because they rely on specialized cells called chemoreceptors to detect literal physical chemicals floating in the air or dissolved in the food we eat. And these 2 senses, they're fundamentally tied to our most primal basic needs. We're talking regulating hunger, thirst, raw emotion, and forming deep, deep memories. Now, at the receptor level, they operate completely separately and they only merge together later on in your brain.
So, let's take a closer look at the nose. The nose we see in the mirror. It's really just a funnel. It's just the doorway. The real magic happens deep inside your skull, in the microscopic world of the olfactory epithelium. The sheer difference in scale here is kind of mind-blowing. The actual chemical detection, the real smelling, happens on a purely microscopic cellular level.
And actually, let's bust a quick myth right off the bat here. You know that visible nose hair? It has absolutely nothing to do with smelling. Its job is purely defensive. It's just a net to trap dirt and defend your body against infection. The real heroes are the olfactory cilia. These are these tiny, microscopic, hair-like structures protruding from sensory cells. You have about 6 to 8 per cell, and they dip right into a layer of mucus to physically catch and bind to those floating odor molecules.
Zooming into this cellular neighborhood, which, by the way, is tiny, only about 4 to 5 square centimeters, we find some highly specialized cells. You've got your bipolar sensory neurons, those are the actual detectors. Then you have these basal cells acting like stem cells ready to divide and regenerate your sense of smell. And right in the mix are the Bowman's glands. They literally produce the mucus that traps the odors in the first place, making this whole catching process possible.
Think of chemical detection kind of like a lock and a key. An epitope is just a fancy word for a specific functional shape on an odor molecule. When a specific shape, let's say it looks like a spade from a deck of cards, floats in, it has to perfectly fit into the matching spade receptor on your sensory cell. If it doesn't fit, no smell. It is a perfect, highly specific biological match.
And once that chemical key unlocks the receptor, boom, a biological relay race begins. This is actually a discovery so massive, it literally won a Nobel Prize in 2004. It goes like this, in 4 basic steps. First, the odorant binds. Second, that triggers a chemical cascade called CMP signaling inside the cell, creating an electrical action potential. Third, that electrical signal zips up the nerve and synapses with what are called mitral cells. And finally, step 4, that signal is forwarded straight up into the brain. Fast, elegant, and absolutely crucial.
Now, inside the olfactory bulb, the signal hits these little round structures called glomeruli. And you can think of glomeruli as highly organized relay stations. Every single sensory cell in your nose that detects the exact same scent sends its signal to one specific glomerulus. It is so cool. It beautifully takes the absolute biological chaos of the nose and organizes it perfectly before passing the baton to the rest of the brain.
So where does that perfectly organized signal actually go? Well, it hits several brain areas all at the exact same time. It goes to the olfactory cortex so you can consciously think, yes, coffee. But incredibly, it also routes directly to the amygdala, which processes raw emotion, and the hippocampus, which stores memories. That direct, completely unfiltered wiring, that's exactly why a single scent can instantly make you feel nostalgic or emotional. There is no middleman. And you know what? That direct wiring is actually the hard science behind real-world aromatherapy. Inhaling lavender is scientifically shown to promote restful sleep and lower stress. Citrus actively increases your alertness. Rosemary and peppermint can actually aid memory recall. There's even research on it supporting Alzheimer's patients. And lemongrass? It's been shown to actually reduce aggression. It is just astonishing how totally invisible molecules can literally hack our brain states.
And we are staggeringly sensitive to these invisible molecules. We can detect trace amounts down to a billionth of a gram per liter. By the way, women often have even higher sensitivity to smells, especially during ovulation. But to actually test this sensitivity in a clinic, doctors use specialized tools like sniffin sticks, which are these pens impregnated with specific odors, or smell diskettes to map out exactly what thresholds you can and cannot detect. It's fascinating how precisely we can measure such a hidden sense.
But because this system is so delicate and complex, it can definitely break down. We have specific medical names for these smell disorders. Hyposmia is a decreased ability to smell. You probably had this during a bad flu. Anosmia is the permanent loss of smell, sometimes from a bad viral infection. Then there's dysosmia, where things just smell entirely wrong. And phantosmia, that's where you actually hallucinate smells that aren't there, which can happen with neurological issues like severe migraines.
Now, before we move on to taste, there's a fascinating anatomical mystery hiding right in our noses. Deep in the nasal septum is something called the vomeronasal organ, and this sparks a massive ongoing debate in biology. Is this a functional sixth sense in humans? Because in many animals, this is an entirely separate accessory system used exclusively to detect chemical signals from others of the exact same species.
What this organ is searching for are called pheromones. These are odorants that operate completely below your conscious sensory threshold. You don't smell them, but your nervous system registers them anyway. We're talking about chemicals like androstenone and androstenedione found in human sweat and urine. The wild part? These unperceived chemicals might be secretly influencing our behavior, our liking of others, and our social relationships. Unseen chemicals might literally be running your social life in the background. How crazy is that?
All right, let's smoothly shift gears to gustation, or taste. The physical pathways for detecting an odor in the air versus a taste in your mouth start in completely different places. However, they travel up and converge together in the brain. And that right there is exactly why complex flavors aren't just about taste. Flavor is actually a rich, combined experience of basic taste sensations mixed with the complex odors you detect internally while you're chewing.
So, the crucial point here is we really need to bust another classic myth today. Remember that tongue taste map from elementary school? The one claiming you only taste sweet on the tip of your tongue or sour on the sides? Yeah, you can officially scratch that. Throw it out. Modern science proves that all taste sensations, sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, can be detected across all regions of the tongue. Every region has receptors for every flavor modality. Some spots might be slightly more sensitive, sure, but the map is totally busted.
Let's look at the true anatomy. Those visible bumps all over your tongue, they aren't actually the taste buds. They're called gustatory papillae, and they come in a few different architectural styles, like circumvallate, foliate, fungiform, and filiate. Hidden deep inside those papillae are hundreds of microscopic taste buds, which house the true sensory cells, and just like in the nose, these cells have tiny hair-like extensions called microvilli that reach out, catch dissolved food molecules, and fire off an electrical signal to your afferent axons.
And how does that signal get from your tongue to your brain? It uses a superhighway of cranial nerves, specifically the facial, glossopharyngeal, and vagus nerves. These signals travel all the way up through the brainstem and eventually merge with those olfactory or smell signals we talked about earlier. That intricate merging of sensory data in your higher cortical levels is what creates your final, brilliant, unified perception of flavor.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. Next time you take a slow sip of your morning coffee or smell a fresh rose, will you be able to feel that incredible, invisible chemical relay race happening right inside your head? From microscopic cilia catching floating molecules to electrical signals racing straight into your emotional centers, your chemical senses are just a breathtaking biological miracle. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and as always, stay curious.